Hello, welcome to Asian Who's Who in Houston. I'm Ed Gore, and I'm one of the hosts of this exciting program where we're going to give you an idea and a glimpse into the possibilities of the people who will be coming to our Houston area to talk about their exciting adventures. And today, we're going to have an exciting story from a young man named Jesse Yu. Jesse comes to us from the Bay Area. And Jesse, your first trip to Houston, is that right? Or have you been here before?
First trip in 10 years, yeah.
Well, great.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Well, welcome
Great
to Houston.
to be back.
Glad to have you here. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, Jesse.
Yeah, thanks, Ed, for having me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm Jesse. I'm originally from LA, actually, and grew up in between LA and Taipei, half-half. Grew up as a typical Asian American. I think when I was 7 years old, there was a point where you come home and you refuse to speak Chinese. And at that point, my mom was like, that's it. So she sent me back to Taiwan for 6 years. And we had a special deal. So the deal was, there was a book in Chinese called Hong Lo Meng, which is kind of like written by this guy, kind of like the Mark Twain of US, like a very, very famous book. And it's in classical Chinese. And the deal was I had to be able to read and understand that book in order for me to come back. And so I studied Chinese really hard. Took me about 6 years to do that. So after I finished middle school in Taiwan, I moved back to LA, went to high school in LA, and then got into Cornell and West Point. I was really into the military thing back then. And then ultimately I decided I wanted a more normal education, so I went to Cornell.
Well, you know, Jesse, the one thing I can tell you that most people identify with is the fact that your parents wanted you to speak Chinese, whether it's Mandarin or Cantonese or Toisan in my case. I have to commit, you know, the reason I think I identify with you is because I am a Chinese school dropout. I told my parents, okay, I'm not going back to China for sure because the conditions back then were not good.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that story. You know, confession's always good, right, folks? And so I want to thank Jesse for that. Now, when you went to school, you got your degree in what? What was it?
Yeah, I studied engineering.
Okay.
ORIE, Operations Research and Industrial Engineering. Some people also call it, really, it's engineering, because it's kind of the least hardcore engineering of all the engineering. But that was my thing.
So it's more about efficiencies.
Factories, optimizing factories.
Okay.
Think about a subway where people come in and you're queuing. How do we reduce wait time? Things like that.
I'd like to see some of that happen in some of the big cities where we have congestion, especially in the terminals. But I think what brought you into the next phase of your life? I think you went into a different area after you spent some time.
So after graduating, I really wanted to go back to Asia.
Okay.
I thought Asia was really happening. It was really exciting at the time, and I had an opportunity to join McKinsey & Company, which is a global management consulting firm. At McKinsey, I worked pretty much exclusively on energy. So I was in China, I was in Mongolia, I was in the mine pits, and China was digging up tons and tons of coal at the time and also polluting the environment. So I was doing lots of helping multinationals come into China, how to position their product, how to sell, how to do M&A, things like that. And I did a lot of what I call dirty energy. I got really into it, but after about 3 years, I also realized that I love energy, but I want to solve the problem. So I wanted to move from dirty to clean energy.
Okay.
And at that point, Silicon Valley, solar had just started. This was right around 2007, 2008.
Correct.
There was lots of solar companies starting. I got a good offer to join a firm in Silicon Valley called Applied Materials. And they were ramping up their solar division at the time. So I joined them. After that, I wrote a business plan and got about $30 million from our CFO. He sent me back to China, which is kind of interesting. I moved to Silicon Valley, but he sent me directly back to China. And I lived in Xi'an for about a year, which is close to the Gobi Desert. I was out there doing surveys, talking to local, electricity companies, things like that, and developed the first Chinese solar farm back in 2007.
So your interest in solar came as a result of your desire to clean the environment up, to make sure that even in China, I think we know that the pollution laws probably are not anywhere near as stringent as here in the United States.
Yeah.
But I think the desire is because with 1 billion people there, 1.2 billion people there, it's a lot of pollution to put upon a population.
Yeah. It was all China. There was a specific example I remember. So I was in a city called Taiyuan, which is the capital of Shanxi province. Something like 40% of China's coal come from that one area. And I spent a lot of time in that city, and I would always remember coming back to the hotel at night. Everything that came off my face was black. just like powderish, right? And then everything that came out of my nose was also black, that really struck me. And that there are people who just live there their whole lives, and that's all they breathe, and all it's in their water, it's in their air, it's in their food. And after that experience, I truly believe that the climate crisis is the biggest problem of our generation, and that I have an obligation to solve it. I've been given with lots of good things, lots of resources from this society, like being born into a good family, having good education, and I feel like I have an obligation to solve this problem. And so my passion for solar, and specifically solving the climate crisis, really came out of that China coal mining experience. Right. And then that led me to a series of things afterwards in Silicon Valley, from working at a solar company, building solar farms, investing in solar companies at a venture capital firm, and then later helping Al Gore develop solar policies at his
So what is going to be the effect of solar right now in China? Do you see that as being an industry that can be done, or do you still see the effect of this cheap coal and availability?
Oh no, for sure. I mean, the beauty of China is that Beijing has the ability to just turn things on and off like that. Okay. So China was not really on the map in 2007 in terms of solar. Germany was actually the country that had the most solar installation at the time. Germany's not a very sunny country, but they have very progressive policies. Right. But China turned on the switch right around 2013, 14, and they went from nothing to being first in the world in 1 year. So they installed something like 10 gigawatts in 2013.
So your idea is to bring cleaner, more efficient power to China, as well as other countries around the world, to solve the pollution crisis. I don't want to say the climate change, but there's a lot of climate going around. But besides that, I think it is more of a health issue that you're concerned about.
It also affects people's health directly. Yeah.
So I think when I saw your story, I said, well, the interesting thing to me about it is you were able to see how your work evolved into something that could help people around the world, especially in China, where we both have our roots per se. But I think you're trying to solve a problem before it becomes a problem in China. So tell us a little bit about how the solar thing is catching on in China as well here in the United States. I'm kind of curious to hear your background behind that.
Yeah. So, China has a very unique problem because a lot of people live in the north, so north of the Yellow River. And what happens during the winter is that there's mandatory heating because it gets very cold. And then the way they heat entire cities is through large, like humongous coal furnaces. And there's been a lot of study done on what that does to the environment. And the most obvious impact is that people in China, people in northern China on average live 5 years less than people in southern China. Okay. And if you kind of do the math, there's about 500 million people there. Multiply that by 5, that's 2.5 million man lives lost as a result of burning coal for winter heating. The company I was with before, it's a coastal venture funded startup called Cogenera Solar. We do solar cogeneration. So essentially, we take the energy from the sun and we make electricity in addition to heat. Most of the heat is usually wasted from the solar panel, but we harvest that waste heat and then we give it back to the city through large water loops. And then we help reduce a lot of that carbon that's going into the air.
Let me ask you this. In your spare time that you may have had over there, were you able to determine any of the metrics of the health issues going on in the communities that your company is involved with to try to solve these problems of pollution? Were you able to determine any of the medical problems that the people were having been exposed to all the coal and the dust?
Yeah, I mean, I think cancer is the most obvious one. Cancer being a complete degeneration of your entire metabolism. People who live in cities that burn coal, which is pretty much most of China, they're being constantly bombarded with carcinogens in the food, in the air, in the water. China is also a growing and booming economy, which means there's probably lots of stress in people's lives, wanting to privatize, wanting to make a better living for themselves. So you add those four things together. So food, water, air, and then stress. That makes for a lot of cancer. And I saw a lot of that. I also saw a lot of skin issues because that's usually the first venue when your body starts to fail. A lot of things come out through the skin. So lots of eczemas, and I saw lots of health issues. And then asthma is the other obvious one from air pollution.
Well, I think with all the travel that you did and the time that you spent over in China, it brings us to this kind of one of the reasons why you're here to talk to us today about a therapy that you actually came under. You developed cancer. Tell me a little bit about that and how it started, how you developed, how you diagnosed it, or how you became to determine you had this.
Yeah. So it was 2013. I had just been promoted to general manager, and I was managing all of China. And it was a very stressful year because we're a startup. We're always cash strapped in a way, and I was there raising money, trying to do lots of things. I actually counted the number of hotel cards I collected in that 1 year. It was 300.
Wow.
So I was always waking up and sleeping in a different hotel, and I was traveling all over China. I would wake up in Beijing, go to Shanghai, end up in either Xi'an or some remote province where the solar site was. So after a very stressful year, I noticed a small blip on my left heel, and I thought I was curious because it was morphing and changing very quickly. I took a picture and actually sent that picture back to my physician in San Francisco. He said, "Hey, dude, no, don't worry about it." I was 31 at the time. He knew I was healthy. He had all my records. He said, "Don't worry about it." But something in my gut told me that wasn't right because we all have sunspots or moles on our bodies sometimes. But this one was just changing so fast. The colors, the borders, being asymmetric, all that stuff. So I bought my own ticket. I came back the next day. My girlfriend RJ came to San Francisco airport to pick me up. I went straight to the hospital, and I went to the best one. I went to Stanford, and they did a biopsy, and I had it. And they told me it was melanoma, which is aggressive skin cancer. It's not very common, especially among Asians, but it's very deadly. So roughly 75% of the people who die from skin cancer dies from melanoma. And then I had the same biopsy. I sent it to 2 other labs in UC San Francisco and another hospital. They all said the same thing. So I knew definitively that I had skin cancer, and that was kind of the how all the craziness started.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the things that have happened to Jesse are things that could happen to any of us, even here in the United States, where we have minimal amount of pollution compared to China, but still an issue for us to consider. We'll be right back with Jesse to talk more about his exciting story and how he overcame some of this in the next segment. Stay tuned with us. Welcome back to Asian Who's Who in Houston, and certainly a pleasure to have again with us a gentleman from the Bay Area of San Francisco, Jesse Yu. Jesse, you were just finishing up the earlier segment talking about how you developed cancer from having the struggles through travel, all the work that you were doing, the involvement in China with the coal industry, and you saw all the pollution that's going on, and you yourself actually developed a case of cancer. Tell us a little bit more about that again, and kind of refresh our audience about that.
Yeah. So in 2013, it was a very stressful year. I was running around China. I remember collecting hotel cards. I actually had 300 cards from that year, which meant I was always traveling nearly 100% of the time. And so I found a little blip, kind of the size of a pencil eraser on my foot. And I noticed the color, the texture, being asymmetric, all that stuff was changing. And then I took a picture, sent it to my physician here in San Francisco. He said, "Don't worry about it." But something in my gut told me that it just didn't feel right. And I bought a ticket, came back, got 3 biopsies. They all said it was melanoma, which is aggressive skin cancer. And melanoma is not very common, especially among Asians, but it's very deadly. So roughly 75% of the people who die from skin cancer dies from melanoma.
So what did your doctor suggest or recommend you do to treat this?
Surgery and chemo right away. And that's what I did. So I went to the best doctor I could find in the Bay Area, which is Stanford Hospital. They said that if hey, look, you're young. If you do surgery right away, you still have a X% chance of living more than 5 years, but that X wasn't 100%. And I said, okay, yeah, please sign me up. I knew that this was the best doctor I could find. And what happened was 2 hours before my surgery, I got 30 voicemails from my mom when I woke up that morning. And just to summarize, she was basically asking me to consider a alternative therapy called the Gerson Therapy.
Okay.
And I gotta tell you, at that moment, I thought my mom was crazy because here I am. I have the best doctor on one hand, and then there's my mom who's not a doctor.
Right.
And I was panicking at the time, and I remember there was a manager that I really respected when I was working at McKinsey, and he told me that, Jesse, most of the problems in this world happen because you use your gut when you should use your head, and vice versa. So I thought, clearly this should be one of those situations where I should probably go with logic and just go with the doctor's orders. But something in my gut told me that I need to be a little bit more brave and have trust in my mom. And there's lots of reasons why I trust her so much.
Right.
And one of them being I'm her only son. I also know she's a very smart woman. And so I decided to go with my instinct, kind of shooting from the hip. I canceled the surgery 2 hours before. And I went home and started doing Gerson therapy.
Now, tell us a little bit about this. Well, first of all, let me ask you, how did your mother find out about this treatment? Because obviously you must have told her what was going on in your life.
Yeah.
So she must have gone into doing her own research as well.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how she came about to find this and what led her to suggest this is better treatment for you.
Right. So 20 years ago, my mom lost both her dad and her brother to cancer within 6 months. So she basically lost her entire family in the course of 6 months through cancer. And I think after that incident, my mom, during the period in the hospital, she felt very helpless because she didn't have any medical knowledge. She didn't know what to do. And for 20 years, she's been researching very diligently, how to do prevention through natural means, and Gerson therapy was top on the list. So as soon as I told her I had melanoma, she deliberated basically for several hours with my dad, and I can tell from the timestamp on the voicemail, they both didn't sleep that night. And then she told me, please, stop surgery, try this, and if you don't believe it or if it doesn't work, you can still go back after 2 weeks. It's not a one-way street. I can always go back to surgery and chemo. So I decided to trust my gut, trust my mom, and just give this thing a shot. And of course, my life was on the line. So I sort of put on my management consultant hat and I due diligence the hell out of this Gerson therapy thing. I interviewed a lot of patients. I looked at a lot of literature, including a lot of peer-reviewed studies on the efficacy of Gerson therapy. And ultimately, I came to the decision that this was the right therapy for me. May not be for everyone, but it was the right thing for me to do at the time.
So tell us a little bit about what you had to do for 2 weeks. You mentioned it was about a 2-week period from the time you decided not to have the surgery.
Yep.
And your mother said, well, for 2 weeks, let's try this out.
Right.
So what did you have to do to accomplish this?
Right. Gerson therapy solves the two underlying causes for cancer and also a lot of chronic diseases, and that's toxicity and deficiency. So toxic substances in our food, water, air, and also stress, that's one. Deficiency being mostly the fact that people don't get enough fruits and vegetables. So 9 servings a day, 90% Americans don't get that. And so Gerson therapy is really 4 things. It's food, it's juices, it's coffee enemas, which is the really weird part, and then specific supplements. So kind of in a nutshell, those are the 4 things I did. And it's in a very specific order in very large quantities. I was doing about 20 pounds a day of fruits and vegetables.
Wow. So any particular types of fruits and vegetables you had to do? I mean, we're always thinking, okay, I like Chinese vegetables, and I do like some Chinese fruits. Do they involve any of our ethnic fruits and vegetables that we might normally see?
Some, yeah. So all the typical stuff you can think of. I typically wake up at 6 in the morning. I do 1 coffee enema every 4 hours. That's the first part, which is detoxifying. And coffee has a very specific effect on the liver in terms of stimulating liver enzymes to get rid of carcinogens in our body. And then the second thing is juicing. So I juice by the hour with this large stainless steel juicer.
One of the machines that you see at midnight that they advertise, right?
Yeah. One of those really loud ones that kind of blow things up,
Right.
and then you smash it cold press, raw,
Right.
you know, enzymes, all that good stuff. So I juice 13 times a day by the hour, and that's one of the main reasons I had to quit my job.
Okay.
Pretty much, you know, immediately, and then my life was basically spending 12 hours between the kitchen and the bathroom for the next year and a half. Because if you think about 20 pounds of produce,
Right.
you have to buy it, you have to clean it, you have
Right.
to cut it, you have to juice it, you have to cut it again, and then you have to cook it, and then you have to clean up. And then after you do that, 1 hour is up, and then you do it again. So it's kind of like Groundhog Day for
Right.
a year and a half. But it was worth it. So after a few months, I saw the tumor regress, and I took a lot of pictures to
Right.
show people. I also give a lot of talks at local schools and churches about my experience. And then so yeah, that's basically what it involves. It's five coffee enemas a day for the first few months, and then gradually down to about one after about a year. 13 glasses of juices freshly pressed by the hour. And then the rest is certain specific foods, some cooked, some raw, all organic.
Okay, so that was
Yeah.
my other question is that you had to find organic vegetables and fruits and all that, because it seems to me that wherever most things are grown today, they're either chemical fertilizers being used, or they are, you know, sprayed with some pesticides, that kind of thing. So you were able to find sufficient quantities of organic products to do this.
I was lucky. I think being in California, especially Bay Area,
True.
There's lots of that in East Bay. There's lots of organic farms out there, and so I was just buying stuff. I actually went to the source. I sort of bypassed Whole Foods because I was buying in such large quantities.
Sure.
I went to Whole Foods Supplier, this little warehouse in Potrero Hill, and I was just buying 50 pounds of apples, 50 pounds of carrots. I took a picture of my fridge, which was just filled with apples and carrots and other vegetables, and my girlfriend couldn't even fit a Subway in there, so she had to watch me do that, and she had a lot of that herself as well.
So today, so what is your prognosis today? Where is this thing today? Where are you as far as the melanoma today?
Yep. So a few things. The tumor is gone.
Great.
I still do a blood test about every quarter or so. Everything is clean. All the scans are clean. All the blood tests are clean. There's no visible tumors. I have good energy. I've also gone back to work, and I'm on a new mission right now to help busy people stay healthy, because I realize a lot of people sacrifice health for their career and jobs and things like that. Kind of.
Now,
like
you went back to your doctor that you found from Stanford, and what did he say after he still saw you afterward?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious to see, what did he finally say to you?
I think I was very lucky there. My doctor was a very good sport. I probably not every doctor would agree with what I'm doing, but I think my doctor was quite open-minded. And so he still supported me, and I'm very grateful for that throughout this whole process. So he still did, blood tests and scans for me about every 3 months or so, just to make sure all the metrics are on track.
Well, I really have to say, and I know the audience agrees with me, congratulations on the effort, and thanks to your mother. She should maybe become a doctor at Stanford one day, but it might work. But I think there are so many ideas that people have about cancer, and thoughts, concerns, fears, ideas that they think might work. So Jesse, what do you think you could tell people today that says, what would you advise someone who may get the same type of cancer or develop a different kind of cancer? What would you say to them?
Yeah. So, my goal right now is to really pay it forward. Gerson Therapy saved my life, and my goal is actually not to convince the world that everyone should do Gerson Therapy, but I would like people to know that if they do have cancer and other chronic degenerative diseases, that they do have a second choice, that it is an option. And this option involves you helping your body to heal itself, because the body has a very unique way of healing itself, and Gerson Therapy activates that. And so that's the message that I want to tell people. I gotta tell you, throughout this 2 years, this 2-year healing period, I saw lots of people, not only with cancer, but also high blood pressure, diabetes, all sorts of issues with the liver, with the joints, with the skin, etc. And a lot of people have been healed completely, not just symptomatic relief, but healed completely with Gerson Therapy. And On the other hand, I also saw a lot of people sort of die on their sickbed not knowing this information. So my goal is really just to get this information out there. The choice is ultimately yours, but I would like people to have the option of just trying something else.
Well, if you were to change anything about yourself, because I know you mentioned you thought maybe some things that causes could have been toxicity and deficiencies, probably lack of sleep, lack of a lot of different things. If you were to do something over again, was there something you would do differently today that having seen what happened in your first 10 years of your career?
Yeah. So I think mainly for me, it's two things that caused my cancer. That's just sort of how I feel. Number one is nutrition. I was eating lots of, I used to love Trader Joe's. I mainly go to their frozen food section, and so all my stuff was frozen.
Processed, I guess.
Processed food. Yeah, lots of processed food.
Okay.
So that was my diet for a very long time. Everything was just like microwave and nuked, right? And then that was most of it. So better nutrition is one, and the second thing is just managing stress better.
Right.
There's a saying in Chinese where sometimes you can pick things up, but you can't put it down. That was kind of me before. I like to take on a lot of things. I give myself a lot of pressure. I have a very high bar for myself. I still do, but I think I'm able to let go more.
So you're kind of on a mission now. Talk a little bit more about not only the Gerson Therapy, but I think about solar energy.
Yeah.
The things that it could do to solve. I think you're trying to solve several things today. Jesse, an exciting story for you. I want to thank you for being on our program today. It's something our audience can look at. We are concerned about the things that are going on in our world today, the environment. Jesse, you an exciting example of things that can happen to a person. The young man who's on his way up, but he's also on his way to help the community and those around us through your work. You're back doing solar work still?
Mostly focused on health right now.
Okay, so he's mostly focused on health. He's been involved with things to help in the environment, cleaning up the environment for health. Thanks again for watching Asian Who's Who. Thank you again, Jesse, for being here with us.
Thanks so much for having me.